Hello, everyone. It's just about 7 o'clock, a minute away. I'm Polly Simpkins, and I'm so happy. This is so fun. Thank you for showing up and for just kind of being here. And thanks to Joe Stickles, who's my tech tonight from MVY, and really appreciate his help. We've never done this before, so this is totally new and really fun to just know that you're here. So I also want to thank PJ Finn, who collaborated with me on this project. And for all who love music and books, I think it's going to be a great group, and hopefully we can continue it. And thanks for making the effort to be here. So again, I'm Polly Simpkins. Thanks to all my MVY colleagues, and for you for listening and for being part of this community. So to be like on Zoom with you and to meet you like this is such a gift. So thank you so much for coming. The basic format, how it's going to be moving forward, is I interviewed and have interviewed most of the authors for the books. And Chris Frantz and I had a conversation about a month, maybe 5 months ago. And I made up a little video, and that's kind of going to be the format. It's a 15-minute long. It has a couple of clips from the video, from the interviews, and it also has just a little background on Talking Heads. If you didn't read the book, it's totally fine. No worries at all. It's just about getting together and talking about music and being here. So you can leave your cameras off, you can leave them on, you can get a drink, relax, and just be part of this group. After the video, which is, as I said, is about 15 minutes, then we'll just open it up to discussions. I have a couple questions and prompts, so we can just kind of get started and talk and see what comes up. And if anybody wants to stick around after for about 15 minutes, we're going to stop recording around 8 o'clock. If anybody has anything else they want to talk about or say, I'm happy to stick around then. So thank you. And without further ado, I think we'll get the video started. And again, thanks to everybody for coming.
Everybody, get in line.
The Talking Heads journey began in 1975 in New York City. Originally a trio who met at RISD, David Byrne, Chris Frantz, and Tina Weymouth moved to New York together, where they lived in a loft on Christie Street. Living just a few blocks away from CBGB's, this iconic venue would become central to their lives and the trajectory of the band as they hung out with the likes of the Ramones, Patti Smith, Debbie Harry, and television. Their first performance was at CBGB's opening for the Ramones, which led to an offer to back their European tour. In 1976, they signed with Seymour Stein from Sire Records. In 77, the band brought on Jerry Harrison, a guitarist formerly with Modern Lovers. Now they were a quartet. Talking Heads went on to masterfully create 8 studio albums, 2 live albums, and 8 compilation albums, working closely with renowned producer Brian Eno on 3 of those albums, and sticking with Sire Records for their entire career. Chris Frantz's book, Remain in Love, thoroughly illustrates from his perspective the creativity and inspiration that each member of the band brought forth from their early days at RISD until the dissolution of the band in 1988, ultimately becoming one of the most visionary and groundbreaking bands in modern music history. I sat with Chris Frantz a few months back to talk about all things Talking Heads, his book, and Tina Weymouth, of course. It was hard to choose just a few clips from a fascinating and much longer conversation about what it's like to remain in love. 3 blocks away from CBGB and finding that loft and the 3 of you living there. And I wrote down, you said songs and arrangements would evolve slowly over a period of time through repeated playing. The great majority of our songs, particularly the early ones, were always a collaborative effort. We did not record them. We didn't even have a tape recorder.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It's incredible. And I'm just wondering, what was it? I mean, you spoke so beautifully about it in the book, and living in the ceiling coming down when you were like making music. But what was the 3 of you living together, I think for like 2 years, and you would have rehearsal sessions, or like you each had your day jobs, but then you would, work on stuff at night.
Yeah, we would come home from our day jobs. All 3 of us had jobs on 57th Street in New York. Tina was at Henry Bendel. She was a salesperson. I was at a store called Design Research, which was I was the stock boy, and I would like unload the trucks when they came with merchandise, and but it was a good job, a good day job to have, and David ran the stat machine at an ad agency that did like Prince Machiavelli and clients like that, and so we would come home from our day jobs on the subway. Subways were 35 cents then, and we would one of us would pick up some small kind of groceries, and we had a hot plate which belonged to Tina and a toaster oven which belonged to Tina. And that was where we would cook our food on that, usually some kind of pasta, and then we would rehearse into the night, and then get up and be at work by 9 o'clock the next morning. And it was great. We really had fun. And one of the best days of my life, to be honest, was the day Tina walked. I had been begging Tina to join the band because I just felt like I had this idea that she would be perfect in that. I was not suggesting that she play bass. She could have played guitar or keyboards or been the singer or anything like that. I felt I had this intuition that she would be good. And she chose to play the bass because we couldn't find anybody else to do it. Like people would look at me. We'd invite a few people to join our band, and they would just look at us like, no, you guys don't have the right look. And we did not have the look of which was fashionable then, which is like the New York Dolls or the Rolling Stones. We didn't look like that. So the day Tina at Henry Bendel, she made less money than the rest of us. I think after taxes, it was something like $60 a week. Can you imagine? In New York City?
Crazy.
But she would put $5, unbeknownst to me, she would put $5 down on a bass guitar on layaway every week. And then on her, I think it was her 22nd birthday. Yeah. On her 22nd birthday, her parents gave her $100. And so that enabled her to finish off the payments on the bass guitar. And she walked into our loft very proudly with this bass guitar. And I thought, oh my God, she's got a bass. It was a really fine vintage Fender Precision.
1963, right?
Yeah. The best year. And then she started playing with us, and the rest is history.
It sure is. My goodness, it's incredible. When I was reading about you talking about playing live, especially the first time I heard you mention it was in Paris, and you said, I was transported to a place where everything was clear, passionate, and beautiful. And later on, you said, with every city we visited, we never failed to bring the party and ultimately the church. And then lastly, later on with Remain in Light, you said, as I played this wonderful song, which I think was Take Me to the River, and looked out over at Tina, I felt a more powerful love than ever before for her and a touch of the divine in my own heart. And I was wondering, I mean, as a drummer, from your vantage point and having the love of your life and your muse and this amazing person with you, which obviously is reflected in the music because it's so incredible how you just vibe together. But how can you speak to what you do as a drummer being connected to the divine or to source, or how do you explain that feeling that you get? And does it happen every time? Like when you were always out on tour, was it always like that? Or was it sometimes, or do you think it's related to what good music is?
Well, I do think it's related to what good music is, but some nights are better than others.
Yeah.
But having said that, I don't think Talking Heads we had very few off nights, if any. I mean, part of our thing was we were a little off anyway to begin with, and that was part of our shtick. And we weren't acting. It was really how we felt like we would be nervous, but yeah, there's something about when as a drummer, when you're, playing away behind the drum kit and the audience is kind of moving up and down or side to side and in those days pogoing up and down. I mean, it's like a gospel church. It's the equivalent of that. And I love that. I'm not a particularly church-going person or anything like that, but I can appreciate that feeling of communing and
yes,
sharing an experience with a group of people that's very, it's very, well, there's a lot of emotion, but there's also a lot of intimacy that doesn't really involve sex or anything. It's more of a spiritual intimacy.
it sure is. Moving into the 8 studio albums, the Talking Head albums, how do you see the albums now? How do you think about them? Like, I just am trying to wrap my head around what it must be to have created that music and then now look at them. It just must be this kind of memories that come back. Yeah, like what's it like? And do you think of them differently, each one? Do you think of a different time? And if at all possible, are you able to speak to the ones that are closest to you or the ones that you mean the most to you?
Well, all of them mean a lot to me, but yes, when I listened back to them, and some of them I hadn't listened to for a pretty good long time until we did these Dolby Atmos mixes, and then I had to listen to every song multiple times. And what I always came away with was, yes, you remember the setting, you remember the studio you were in, you remember the engineer, the producer, the assistant engineer, the sandwiches in between takes, you remember all that stuff. But mostly what I felt when I was listening back was, gosh, what a good band we were. We were really, even on our first record, which was the first record we had ever made, we sound good to my ear. And so I'm very happy about that, because what if it didn't sound good? That would be terribly embarrassing.
It's so true. Gosh, they all are just, I think of them each as a different kind of jewel. They all have different facets and beauty to them. And you were going through so many different things during those times, as a band. And you mentioned with Little Creatures that David had come back to singing like kind of less high pitched and kind of more himself. And I'm wondering why you think that is, and was that a comfortable album to make, or were you feeling strain? Or because it seems it's such a happy, wonderful record.
Yeah, the playing on that record is really good. David is an unusual person, and at some point he decided that he wanted to kind of croon. He didn't say that, but to my ear, that's what it sounded like. And I think he continues that to this day with his solo work. And sometimes it's that high-pitched kind of thing that he's so good at, but other times it's more mellifluous. Anyway, he's come a long way in his singing from the early days. I remember very early on, he thought he should take vocal lessons. He said, he asked Tina and I, you think I should take vocal lessons? And we said, well, why not? I don't think it would hurt. So he went to a very well-known vocal coach who, he had 1 or 2 lessons, and then she wanted him to sing. He had to draw the line at this point. She wanted him to sing "Send in the Clowns." And he was like, I'm not going back. I can't sing "Send in the Clowns." But now he sings in that style. It's so funny. He arrived at that point where he might not be singing the lyrics, but he's singing in that style.
Oh my gosh, so interesting.
Where are the clowns?
Totally. Fascinating. Oh, well, you do a beautiful job in the book of just talking about the dynamics between all of you and just you and Tina. I mean, totally just, as you say at the end of the book, just totally still living a creative, beautiful life together. It's really, really inspiring. I saw the recording of the 2002 Hall of Fame induction, and I thought that was fascinating, having read the book and David thanking all of you when he got up to the mic, which I thought was really interesting because you hadn't spoken in a long time.
No, it had been like a number of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
We hadn't played together for something like 18 years. When we did that.
And what was it like? How did it feel?
It felt great. I was very happy to be there, and I was very happy to share the stage that night with, among others, the Ramones, who were also inducted in their first year of eligibility, which we also were, and so it
was a great night.
Felt like a great night.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everybody. So I just want to open things up and hear what you guys have to say. And once again, thank you for being here. So fun to see you all. If you have a chance to put in the chat where you're from or where you're listening from, I'd love to know where you are. We are such a global community at MVY, so it's so fun to know that you're all coming from different places. So basically, as I said before, if you haven't read the book, totally fine. But I'd love to hear, if you have read the book, some impressions, something that stuck with you, what spoke to you in the book, or maybe even what you didn't like so much. The way that we'll do it is, if you right under reactions, if you're not familiar, if you raise your hand, kind of like I'm doing, and that's how we'll do it. And we'll call on you in sequential order if you raise your hand. And the way you do it is just, again, reactions. You click on that, and then you can raise your little virtual hand that way. And that way we can all kind of have a system. We have Charlotte, North Carolina, Mystic, Connecticut, Marblehead, Orleans, St. Petersburg, Florida, the Cape. So awesome. So yeah, does anybody have an impression or anything they'd like to share about what they thought about the book?
I would. Am I interrupting? I can't find the button to push.
Oh, no problem.
My name's Alex. I first of all want to thank you for doing this. It's a great idea. You count on me to be, like it or not, a participant in every one of them. I didn't read the book. I listened to the audiobook, which was read by Chris, which was terrific. I mean, really, to hear that. It started out, and I was actually about to give it up because, to be honest, it started out a little slowly. But then that kind of, it kind of matched up with some things I was interested in. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I knew about Shadyside Academy. I was in Rhode Island, and of course, RISD. And I thought those things were really interesting. It was a little slow in the beginning, but I think that proved the point that he didn't use a ghostwriter, which I did some research on and found out that's right. He did not. This was written by him directly. I thought it showed, there were two other things I just want to mention quickly. I love to hear him describe the creation and recording of a song, especially with a video. And then I would go online to watch and see all the things he was talking about, all those little things that were going on, how they poured the chocolate, which was really clay, and all of those kinds of things. Each one individually made it so enjoyable to read it and follow along. I loved whenever the general turned up. That was so funny, in that time with that audience and with his friends and those people. And here his father's a general and his uncle and some other relations. I thought that was really good. The Tom Tom Club is fantastic. I wasn't a big listener of them. I didn't really know. I'm a huge fan now. And finally, I just happened to see that Stop Making Sense, the movie, has been re-released, and it was featured at the Toronto Film Festival. There was an interview online with Spike Lee, and in that interview, they all appeared. David Byrne was there and everything else. You kind of get an awkward feeling about it, but it was still good to see them all together. That's it. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for doing this.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You were very organized with your comments. Thank you. I know I wanted to talk about Toronto and see if anybody saw that interview, because as I had a much longer conversation with Chris, which we're going to post on our website this week, if you want to take a listen to it. But one thing we did talk about was David, and just the communication was really difficult, as he talks about in the book. So seeing them together in Toronto was fascinating, and Spike Lee interviewing them. So thanks for mentioning that.
Holly, did you invite Chris to attend?
I did. He was actually going to stop by, but he didn't. The schedule for Stop Making Sense got in the way because he's in Toronto. But he said to send his love and thanks for reading the book. He was very appreciative. Laura, go ahead.
Again, like he said, I just thank you so much for putting this together. It was, as soon as I saw it, I said, I'm going to read that book. And I listened to it as well, as you did. And just hearing Chris's voice again now on the Zoom is hysterical. It's just crazy. But I just think what a memory he had. How did he remember all these meals and these little quirky things that happened on the road, even though they were drinking and doing drugs and all that? It's like, I just thought that was really interesting, the small facts that he was able to include in the book. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, I have to speak to that because I asked him that exact question in the interview. And it's so funny you bring it up, Laura, because he said, first of all, he has an amazing memory. He said he's gifted with a memory, but Tina Weymouth took copious notes, and he talked about like every time they had an encore, like what promoters they liked, what songs they played, like what went well, what didn't. So she was very detailed, and I know she's writing her own book right now, which is so exciting, but hopefully she'll share some more details in hers.
Oh, that's cool. I figured somebody had a journal. Somebody kept, some sort of a notebook or diary.
Yeah, I was wondering the same exact thing.
Neat.
And the audio book, I'm glad you guys brought that up because it's so good with his voice.
Very good. Very well done.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I wanted to mention, because I know your name isn't Beth. I can't remember your name now. The first man who spoke. Anyway,
I'm sorry, I'm Alex.
Alex, okay.
I'm using my wife's iPad.
No worries. But he also mentioned it was a slow start, and I heard that from quite a few people, that it being a slow start. So, Aurora.
Hi, yeah, no, thank you so much for putting this together. It was such a joy to read and to follow along with the playlist that you made and everything. Um, I was struck by one, just how affordable everything was, and how that really enabled them to sort of take this big risk and pursue art, like he was saying, with their day jobs. But also, I was wondering if he talked at all to you, because I don't think they really get this far in the book. But after watching the interview, the Q&A with Spike Lee and the whole band, it almost seemed like David had sort of like taken some of their feedback, because he seemed to sort of be like giving them the floor more, or not taking so much credit in the way that Chris had sort of been hurt by, or like that we read about in the book. And I was wondering if in your interview with him, did he mention anything about, has David seen the book? Did David know about the book before it came out? And I was just sort of wondering about like all of those personal dynamics, when you're writing a book about your colleagues and your friends. I don't know.
Yeah, I thank you so much, Aurora, colleague Aurora from MBI. Thank you for showing up. Yes, I think that's such a fascinating, I mean, I'm sure we can all agree that that's such a fascinating part of Chris and just the whole book, and David Byrne, who is such a genius and so talented. And the fascinating thing to me is they knew each other so well. He said at one point in the interview, he says, we did everything together. The three of us were just inseparable for years and years. And so he does talk about in the interview at one point how he starts to distance himself. He starts working with Brian Eno, and they go and do their own album in San Francisco. And he just stops communicating, basically. And so I think that's what followed through until he talks about in the book that David Byrne just said, yeah, we broke up. Talking Heads broke up out of nowhere. And they were like, what? Mm-hmm. So I think that just continued, and there is so much animosity. But I did hear David Byrne just in the last week or two say, and maybe some of you heard this as well, and maybe you can speak to it, but that he had regrets about it, which I thought was fascinating. He said, yeah, I'm kind of a little bit disappointed in how it went down. So it sounds like he's coming around. I don't know how it went in Toronto, but I think it sounds like things are changing a little bit, and he's understanding that maybe that wasn't so cool. Anybody else have thoughts on that? So interesting.
Thought the Asperger's part of David's personality played such a part in some of the things that he does, being an expert in autism and Asperger's.
Yes.
Which I didn't realize he had, but in hindsight was like, oh, yeah, he does.
So interesting. Yeah. And Chris talks a lot about just communication being very difficult. So that makes sense. Thank you. Heather?
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. I thought it was awesome, and jumped at it when I saw that it was about the Talking Heads. Just from a kind of like weird personal experience, used to live in New York, and had a place that I hung out in the West Village. It's like a bar restaurant, and David Byrne was a regular, and he would come in a couple nights a week, and he was always by himself, never really spoke to anyone, would have his meal and then walk right out. And it was just the strangest. And now that I read this book, it just all makes sense, So, and it was, New York and small places, nobody ever talks to anybody or bothers anyone, obviously. But it was just kind of like he came in and left, and now it all makes sense. So it's kind of interesting.
Totally. Yeah.
It was interesting too, because our second date was actually watching Stop Making Sense. Oh, awesome. Friends, and we also told my in-laws that they didn't give their daughters good musical education because they never talked to them about the Talking Heads.
I love it. Great.
And we also discovered that we were on a ski trip once, and there were some of us who were downhill skiers and cross-country skiers, and they had this rule that you couldn't leave until the house was clean, and we couldn't get anybody moving. us downhillers who wanted to be there first. So we started playing Burning Down the House, and we discovered that's a great album for getting yourself moving when you want.
Oh, I love it. It's so true. Jennifer, or one of you must be Jennifer.
Yep. Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to obviously thank you guys so much for doing this. And just what a great walk down memory lane it was, for my college years, and a fun time for my girlfriend and I to get together too. But I guess my big takeaway was just how regular, Chris's life was, and how regular their relationship was. You think about everybody's Mick Jagger, and that was just really revealing to me, and I just really appreciated that. You think of the rock stars being rock stars, it was really a really interesting read for me. Just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, that's such a good point. I know. I love that.
And how they talked about just running into Debbie Harry and
yeah, that was
CBGBs. I know. He was, as he talks about in the interview as well, if you listen to it, he says, I was just such a music fan myself, and I just, to be around Debbie Harry and Patti Smith, and back then he just was just like a kid in a candy store. So cool. Jen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen. Polly, thank you so much for doing this. This is the book club I didn't know I needed to be in, and we'll definitely be back for more. A couple things that folks have already said also struck me, like his memory's incredible. Glad we have that a little bit answered. I was really fascinated by two things, or appreciated two things. One, I love music. I'm obsessed with music. I have zero musical ability myself, so I'm always really intrigued by how songs come together. So I really appreciated how they talked about how they would create their albums and create their songs, because they're so unique. I just assumed that they had these very unique visions and thoughts in their head, and it wasn't so much the way it was, just come together and see where the music takes us, sort of an approach. One of my favorite parts of the book, though, was how New York it felt to me. I don't know if others have strong connections to New York, but I could like smell it and feel it. And he certainly has a deep love and appreciation for having spent so much of his life there. And I thought, for sort of what someone, sorry, I forget your name, was just saying, such a regular guy, but not so flashy. Like, I feel like so many stars write a book and it's like all about them and in a flashy way. Look how amazing I am. And he just seems, even you in your interview with him, Polly, like he's sitting in the back just watching everything happen. And he's just this window for us, the audience of the book and the audience of the band, to see what was happening and read about what was happening. That's a great first book to choose. Thank you, Polly.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I love that image of him being a window, because I think drummers often are back there. They get the whole vantage point of seeing that. And that's why I loved him talking about what is it like to be back there and to have the audience just like, just night after night. So thank you. Kim.
Hi, I also want to thank you for doing this. I love you as a DJ, and I really enjoy the opportunity for this. It was a great first book, and I really loved reading it. I felt like I was immersed in that time period. I only wished I had been there, but I almost felt like I was. And I felt like I traveled with them when they were on tour, and got a kind of a feeling for all of the people that they interacted with. And as an artist myself, just the idea of being visual artists who also expand into music, just how visual their experiences. And when I've seen them perform, it's always been just such a visual experience, and just like multi-immersive. And I just loved his perspective. And I felt like Tina was right there too. So I was glad to hear that she actually had a lot of input on a lot of the details, because I felt like some of his stories about his all-night parties made it impossible for him to have remembered every one of those details. Some of them it was almost so that was really good to see the collaboration involved in that. And I just look forward to the next one. I already have the book and I'm trying to read Lou Reed now. So thank you.
Kim, did you say that you had seen Talking Heads perform?
Yeah.
Oh, tell us about it. 'Cause I never got to see them, so I'd love to hear about it.
Oh, in Boston, I saw the big suit tour. And it was absolutely amazing. We had really good seats. We were up close and it was, I don't know, maybe 82, 83. Is that right? 84? I'm not sure of the exact year. I'm not good with time. It was so long ago. But I know also when I was at UMass Amherst that they performed there. And although I didn't go to that show, one of my best friends went because he was so into them back then. And he said this was back in 77, 78. They performed when they were doing the college circuit. And they just played in a small college bar. And that was truly amazing. But I saw a really big show. I think it was at the Orpheum. It was great.
Awesome. It's so cool. I mean, it brings up the idea of, that's one thing I wanted to ask about is like the connection with the audience. He talks about at the beginning of the book, seeing the Beatles and seeing that the Beatles had this incredible connection with the audience. And I said to him too, like he followed that thread his whole life. Like he saw that and not overtly, but like he always was going toward what he wanted in this very gentle way, it seems to me, and including Tina Weymouth. And he just is so in love with her still. But I'm wondering if what you guys think, I mean, what comes to mind when you think about concerts you've seen and connections like that with the audience? Like when you're in the audience and it's just the best, and you just feel like he talked about just like vibing, like you're just one. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Paulie. And like everyone else, I'll say thank you for organizing this. One of the great things about listening to you as a DJ is I always feel like I'm learning more about the artist than I ever have before. The stories that you bring and your perspective on it. And this is just an extension of that for me. From what I've read of the book so far, and it was slow coming, so I'm behind where everyone else is, unfortunately, but I'm about 100 pages in. But the thing that struck me so far is the fact that Chris is very open about everything. To be that successful and yet be that open has to be a challenge because you're revealing so much about yourself and your past, etc. But I think that what helped make them so successful is they had that openness to people and they had that connection with the audience. They weren't afraid of it like so many people are. I was fortunate about a week ago to see a couple of bands, one of which was Jackson Browne at Tanglewood. And about halfway through the show, he turned to the audience and said, "What do you want to hear?" And there's so many great Jackson Browne songs, it could have been anything. But someone yelled out "Werewolves of London." And Jackson Browne turned to the audience and said, "Do you dare us?" And everybody cheered, of course. And he changed the guitar that he had and he said, "Okay, let's see what we can do." And at that point, the entire audience got up and started dancing. And I think that, Chris, Jackson Browne, all of the great songwriters and artists, the thing that they have that makes them special is they open themselves up and they connect with other people, they connect with their audience. And I think, he does that so openly, it's remarkable. So that's my perspective.
Wow. That sounds amazing, first of all, but yes, I agree. Kim.
I forgot to throw in that I got to see Tom Tom Club at the Wellfleet Beachcomber about 13 years ago. And that was really amazing because it's such a small venue. I think 100 people fit inside, and it's a beachfront bar. And there were about, well, it was Chris and Tina and maybe 7 or 8 other musicians with them, a lot of percussion. And they played for about 2.5, 3 hours. And there were no spring chickens doing that. It was great. It was a really good show. But you were asking about the live performances and just the connection of the audience. Everyone was dancing through the entire event, and it's such a great dance band. So I'd throw that in.
Thank you. And also the Barbara Dacey interviewed Chris and Tina. I don't know if you saw it on the website, but for all of you who are interested, it's on the book club page and also in the archives, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But she interviewed them back in the 80s or maybe early 90s. They came to play at the Atlantic Connection on the Vineyard. It's a great interview, really interesting, the two of them. So yeah, it's cool that they've been around. Anybody else? Good concert you've seen lately? One thing I was going to ask is, you know, if they were talking about Chris, he had when in our interview, he talked about a couple of things he was criticized for. One was he was too harsh on David Byrne, which I'd love to hear what you think about that. And also in chapter 56, I love the quote from Tina Weymouth. She says, "Without adventures, we won't have stories." And I love that quote. But he was also criticized for being too detailed and too much. And like a couple people have mentioned it tonight, but I'm interested in what you think, especially about David Byrne, and if you feel like that is, if he was too harsh, and what it must have been like for him. I felt like maybe he had like a sense of frustration a lot of times, as is clear. But anyway, if anyone has any thoughts on anything you think he could have done better.
I was gonna say I watched American Utopia because of reading the book, and then seeing them even in photos from the past weekend or something. I was just noticing some of David's mannerisms, and I really feel like if things had been diagnosed or people knew something different way back then, maybe his communication would have been better. And I feel like that might have solved some of their issues. I feel like they were also artistic with these visions, and it really did work for a while. And it was very interesting to me to see the print type of art transfer to the music art. I had no idea they went to RISD, so I'm being schooled. But I feel like now everybody is looking for these diagnoses, and maybe that would have helped him at the time, and maybe would have helped the band.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I saw American Utopia during COVID on Broadway, and I kept thinking the whole time, I wonder what it's like to be in a performance like that with him, because he was very singular, and yet it was so beautiful. And he obviously is, the genius of David Byrne is just unbelievable.
Exactly.
And so I kept thinking, I wonder what it's like, because they were all younger actors and musicians. And also they use tons of Talking Heads songs. So I know that has come up too. And Chris, the rest of the band didn't really even know he was doing it. And then it kind of popped up. So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
He's so interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Jen?
It made me think of when you just said he used the songs and the rest of the band didn't know about it. I felt like throughout the book, one thing that struck me from the beginning was Chris's just really pure, he's in it because he loves the music and he's an artist. And sometimes I felt like, and maybe it's a sign of times now and where my perspective is versus how he was thinking about it in the moment, but like they just didn't think through a lot of the like business side of things a lot, I feel like. and putting aside the communication challenges that they had and what we all know now about why that probably existed, but I think a lot of that frustration could have been solved if they were a little bit more methodical about the business and the ownership and the rights and the paperwork and the legalities of it. But on the other hand, I appreciate how pure the approach was and not worrying about that stuff. I'd also hope that as the story becomes known a little bit more, particularly whether it's from David's perspective or Chris's or Tina's, kids who are facing the prospect of diagnoses like that can see someone who's been so revered and so respected, and that could give some comfort about like what a diagnosis like that entails for someone. Curious for, I don't know if David's written a book or not, but it would be curious to hear like his perspective, cover to cover, like Chris has been able to provide, and it sounds like Tina's about to provide.
My husband plays in a band and he says it's like being married to 5 people.
Yeah, seriously. And David has written, I have a couple of his books here. There's also an American Utopia book, and but none of it ever is personal, never. But it's fascinating and beautiful. And I wonder if anybody remembered in the book when they went to Lou Reed's house. And if you didn't read the book, I thought that was so fascinating because Lou Reed wanted to have them sign, or at least sign with their manager. Seymour Stein from Sire ended up befriending them and getting that. But the story of them sitting in Lou Reed's living room while he ate a quart of ice cream at like 4 in the morning, and basically was like, come on, like I can get you a deal. And they were just like, that did not feel good to them. So Erin, what do you have to say?
Hi, Polly. Can you hear me? You can. Good. I'm driving, so otherwise I would be on camera. Thank you for posting this. The book was very enjoyable, and I look forward to reading future books and the next one. I just want to comment. I find it really interesting. I attend a lot of live music. I'm in my late 50s. I continue to do so like I'm a 30-year-old. But 2 of my very best shows, and I have seen Tom Tom Club as well at a small venue in Chicago in the 80s. And I still can remember the energy in the room that night. But 2 of my very best shows are David Byrne shows. And one of them was post 9/11. No commercial jets were flying yet. And he and the band drove from New York to perform this show. And really nobody had been out of their homes in probably, it was maybe 10 days or so. And we all know what that felt like post 9/11, at least most of us on the call. The energy in the room that night was irreplaceable. I've never experienced it again. And then I saw American Utopia at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago when he first performed. And it was, again, incredible energy. What interests me is a person who has difficulties communicating, obviously, which was discussed and we've been discussing, how he connects with the audience on such a visceral level, because I have not been to that many shows where I have seen what felt like 100% connection in people dancing and singing. It's pretty incredible, I think. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I agree 100%. And I heard about that show that they drove to. That's so cool. You get to see that. And yes, I've never seen anything like Dave. When I saw American Utopia, I could not believe him. He was, but still that singular way he connected with almost every single person. Yet in this group he was performing with. So cool.
you.
Thanks for sharing, Erin. Anybody else? So fun to talk about. Thank you. Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I had one more. I read something that David Bowie had written a book, and he had written quite a bit about Talking Heads. And I didn't read the book, so I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know about that, but I know that Chris talks about Bowie quite a bit because he was an important influence, obviously, at the time. But no, I didn't know that about that. I knew that they had a connection and were connected, but I don't know of David Bowie's book. Does anybody know? Maybe we should read that one.
I'll track it down.
Absolutely.
By the way, I was not, well, unmuted. I was not I was a big Talking Heads fan, mostly through the videos, the concert video, the Burn Down the House, and some of the others. But I didn't know about Tom Tom Club at all. And really, having him explain so much about what are the origins of the songs in both Tom Tom Club and in Talking Heads. I don't know. Now I'm listening to a lot of other bands that from the same period, and kind of that super creativity gets through, even though I'm not always online with the music. It's the videos and the lyrics, everything. It's just super creative. It's really enjoyable. So again, thank you, Polly. I'll see you at the next book.
Sure thing.
Thank
And if I wanted to mention before we go, if people wanted to put their email address in the chat, Joe and I were gonna save them if you want to just be in touch. So if, no pressure, but just like not a lot, but just maybe like a reminder of the next book group, just so we can be in touch if you feel like it, just to start a little.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you preview the next book for us a little bit?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't even...
Sure. So The Art of the Straight Line. This is written by Lou Reed before his death. And he was a big Tai Chi practitioner. And the book is about, he wanted to write a book about how important Tai Chi was in his life. They found the manuscript after his death, and Laurie Anderson and 3 close friends of his reworked it and published it. And it's beautiful. And it's not just about Tai Chi, but it's interviews they interviewed over 100 people about Lou Reed, relationships with Lou Reed, who he was and what he was like to be friends with. And I interviewed Mark Richmond, who's one of the editors already. So, and I'm going to see if he might join us, because he said he might be able to. But again, it's The Art of the Straight Line, My Tai Chi by Lou Reed. It's a quick read. It's got some of his notes, a lot of his writing, and then a lot of just interviews with wonderful friends and family, his sister, all kinds of people. So it's pretty cool. Oh, thanks for all the emails, guys.
And the book after that, I've already read because you talked about it on air, Polly, and it is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, This Is What It Sounds Like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know. It's so good.
So good.
Yeah. Susan Rogers. Thank you for mentioning that, Jen. Susan Rogers, a professor at Berklee College of Music, and was Prince's first sound engineer, one of the first female. And she talks a lot about like why we listen to music and what our personal profile says about us. It's really, really interesting. So
I think about the book I won't spoil anything for anybody, but I think about the book almost every time I find myself liking a new song. I get very intellectual about it. Why do I like this song?
Totally.
Yeah.
It changes the way you listen to music. I agree. Totally.
It does. Well, and another thank you to you, Polly. You're always so good on air about talking about this book, or you just are a wealth of information about music. And for someone who loves it so much, and I'm surrounded by people who certainly enjoy music and appreciate it, but aren't always interested in getting too cerebral about it or going down the, nerding out about the artists or the process or anything like that. I appreciate you creating this community of folks who are interested in taking the Saturday morning family to books.
Yeah, and I hope we can continue the community and just have, music nerds unite, like people who want to talk about things like this. It's a small, group, but I just appreciate you all showing up. I'm stunned and just honored to have you here. And I hope we can all stay in touch. And it's going to be bi-monthly. So the next one will be November 15th at 7 o'clock. So it gives us some time to read the books and to, kind of ruminate on things. But I hope you'll be back. And I will send out an email to everyone who leaves their email, just so we can just, have a little. And I'm at Polly at MBY Radio if anybody needs anything or wants to chat more. Alex, were you saying something? Oh, okay. Oh, goodbye. Yeah, thanks, everybody. Does anybody have any closing thoughts or anything lastly that they want to say? Here's to Talking Heads. They rock.
Perfect.
I'm still looking for that long lost shaker of salt.
I know.
Made me remember why I love it so much.
But Lee, are you referring to Jimmy Buffett? Or
I am.
I know. May he rest in peace. That's so sad and so unexpected.
And along those, PJ, your lunchtime the other day was awesome with the Jimmy Buffett stuff.
I know, PJ, I agree.
Cuts were amazing. I really appreciated those. Really, really like those. And Polly, thank you so much too for the playlist that you did to get us psyched up for this book. That was great. Enjoyed that as well.
Totally. And I agree about I at the beginning I said a special thanks to PJ, but he's the one who, I'm talking about music books, and he helped me kind of funnel it so we could do a book group and really gather with people. So thanks to PJ for figuring out what would be best and supporting this project, because I really appreciate it. And I loved his Jimmy Buffett. I love all of his lunch hours, but he did a beautiful job. I agree.
I love that. I think the ending song was My African Friend, and that, like, I was walking the park at work and it just brought me to tears, just the last, and that's how I met my another very good friend or something. It was really sweet. I really appreciated it.
I know. I've never even heard that song before.
Really nice. It's funny. I heard it too on Sirius XM the next day. It was really nice. Not that I don't listen to that. It was like I wasn't screaming MBY, but really appreciated it.
No worries at all. I love a good Sirius XM, in the car and
right.
Well, gosh, thank you all so much. I can't tell you how much it means just to put this all together and then to have you all show up like this. It's such a gift. And I hope that it gave you something as well. And we're going to be posting this recording as well as the full interview, as I mentioned earlier, with me and Chris Frantz on the website in the next couple of days. So if you want to kind of revisit, and for people who didn't get a chance to be here, sending out love to you guys too, for everybody who had to work or couldn't make it or didn't have time. Thanks for checking in and listening to it past the date. So it means a lot. And I think we'll just close things out and just say thank you. And if anybody wants to hang out and has anything else to say, I'll stick around, but otherwise just seriously. And thanks for all the wonderful comments down here, which I haven't even had a chance to read them all, but thank you to everybody just for being here, and may this community continue for sure.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to mention also that I'm going to be saving the chat shortly. So if you want to get your emails in now, if you want to be added to the email list, just throw those in the chat right now, and then I'll save it so that we have your email on the list.
And one more huge thank you to Joe. You're the best, Joe. Thanks for great chat. Seriously.
Thank you, everyone. A real privilege. Appreciate it.
See you next time.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Bye-bye.